Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast on the Alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is episode 77, Manuela Gonzales, Black Widow or Just Unlucky. Manuela Gonzales is very unlucky in love. Over time, she has lost 3 husbands, but some things are a bit fishy about her.
Yeah, I mean, if you have one husband die, that's kind of sad, I guess. 2 husbands is really unlucky. Quite tragic. 3 starting to be a pattern.
Yeah. On the 31st of October 2008, a walker discovers a burnt carcass of a car in a field near Villers-Bonneau in the region of Grenoble.
You say dog walker?
I said walker.
A walker, no dog this time.
No, I have no information whether he has a dog or not. I can't tell. The car is a Citroën Xantia, and it's still smoking at that point.
Wow. You had a Xantia, didn't you?
Yes. I did for a few years. On the back seat, he can see the remains of a human body. So he calls the gendarmes to come quickly, obviously. Once on the scene, in addition to a burnt body in the back seat, they discover the burnt body of a dog in the boot.
Oh, no. Oh, that's just awful.
When they search the area, the cops never find car keys, which they found strange at the time. It's not in the ignition, it's not in the car, it's not around the car, it's not in the bodies, what would have been pockets at the time.
Yeah.
They just don't find any car keys. So they wonder how he drove himself to the field. They also don't find any container that would have contained the accelerant that was used to burn the car, because the car just doesn't burn.
It doesn't spontaneously combust.
Yes. So an accelerant would have been used. They don't know what it could have been, but there's no container of any kind around the car.
Right.
So again, where is that container? How would he burn his own car with him inside if it doesn't have a container for the accelerant? So they found the case puzzling. A partially destroyed reg plate identifies the owner of the car. It's Daniel Cano, 58 years old. It's not certain at that point, but most likely he's the body at the back of the seat, on the seat, in the back of the car.
Oh, yeah.
They don't know if it's an accident, they don't know if it's a suicide, they don't know if it's a murder.
So they just have to ascertain where he is if he's not in the car.
Yes. He's never been in trouble. They have no trace of him for anything. And his disappearance hasn't been reported.
Yeah, that's a bit a bit whiffy, isn't it?
Yeah. So they start searching the area for clues. And they discover that Daniel Cano lives only something like 300 or 400 meters away from the car. The field is just outside the hamlet. During the searches, they meet a woman not far from the car. She's carrying a dog leash, and she tells them that she's looking for her daughter's dog. She's called Manuela Cano. She's Daniel's wife.
Right. I was waiting to say, hang on, I recognise that surname.
Yeah. So they take her to her house, and they start talking to her, and she's very chatty. She tells the gendarmes that she's worried about her husband because she's been without news from him since the previous night. They had a fight because he wanted to go out and deliver some exotic birds that he's breeding as a hobby to a client. And she didn't think it was a good idea to drive, given the state he was in. Because according to her, he felt a bit off on that day in the morning, and he decided to take some paracetamol, but by mistake took a sleeping pill instead.
God.
So, according to one newspaper I saw, they spent part of the day at her parents', and he was very sleepy, slept part of the day. So she doesn't want him to go out driving.
Well, no,
that evening,
I mean, that would be...
And that's why they have an argument, but he left.
Yeah. I mean, if that was me, I would have said, okay, if you're really wanting to do that, I'll drive, and we can go and get it done.
Yeah. But that must have been a strong sleeping pill, because I've taken one day and it didn't do anything to me, and it just knocked him out for a whole day. So anyway, that's what she tells the cops.
Right. Perhaps he was taking more than just one.
Possibly. But if it was paracetamol he was after, you wouldn't take a whole box. You would take one.
That's very true.
So,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
She also tells the gendarmes that the safe in the bathroom upstairs is open, and she doesn't know why.
They have a safe in their bathroom?
Yeah.
That's a
But
bit
the thing is, you put safes in places where you have big walls. And
Right.
the rooms that tend not to have windows and therefore be the strongest
True.
are the bathroom walls.
Yeah, but true.
I don't
Still
know.
kind of weird.
I've seen photos. There is a safe. It is there. And
I
it
just
was
want to
open.
go ew at that point.
And it was on the floor, as floor level. Yeah, it's just the way it is.
Yeah,
Some
okay.
people put them elsewhere. My parents have one in the floor, for example, in the concrete floor.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So anyway, safe can go anywhere, but she thinks that maybe there was a burglary overnight, but she's not sure. She doesn't know why it's open. When the gendarmes tell Manuela that her husband is most likely dead at the back of his car, she doesn't seem that surprised. She says that he's been very depressed for a good while, in fact since the death of his mother, and is getting worse. So she says, yeah, he committed suicide.
So she doesn't seem that upset.
No.
It's a bit cold.
It's a bit cold, yes. When the gendarmes search the house, they discover that one of the rooms has traces of smoke. And I saw it described as traces of smoke. I've seen photos. That was a big fire. It
Right,
wasn't
okay.
traces of smoke. The whole room burnt. It was all charred and black. But it's described as traces of smoke. Manuela explains that a few months earlier, a fire started in that room because of a large candle from Lourdes.
A big can of...
Candle.
Oh, candle,
From
sorry.
Lourdes. That candle that Daniel had lit up in his mother's memory. And she thinks that the dog pushed it and made it fall, and it set the room on fire.
Yeah, so they haven't done anything about it.
They haven't fixed it, no.
No. Weird.
Manuela says that at the time she was downstairs preparing a sandwich for her husband's lunch. That was 4 a.m. That's dedication.
Mm.
And the gendarmes also discovered Daniel's missing ID papers and his phone in the room downstairs in the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he never went out, but somehow he ended up at the back of his car, burnt.
Yeah, you don't go out without your ID papers here.
No, and even that your phone is the 2000s. It's weird.
Yeah. I don't know why. I thought this was kind of like previous to phones, but yeah, you would never go out without your phone.
No, it's not very likely.
No.
It takes a week to confirm the identity of the body. The cops use a toothbrush found at the house.
Okay, so they do it by DNA.
And they compare the DNA of the body to it, and it is the same DNA, so they now know it's Daniel Cano. The autopsy is interesting. It shows that Daniel's body was full of drugs. One of them is a strong anxiolytic called Temesta. Don't know anything about those. Given what he had in his body at the time, he would have been seriously out. He would have been totally...
So this doesn't sound like it was, he took a couple of sleeping tablets instead of paracetamol.
No, there's way more than sleeping. There are sleeping tablets in his body, but there's way more than sleeping tablets.
Yeah.
I think at some point I saw a cop describing it as he was a walking pharmacy.
Okay, he would have rattled if you
Yeah, there was a lot of pills in his body, anxiolytics, sleeping pills, whatever else. There was a lot in his body.
So what are they thinking? That he really did a good job of killing himself?
Well, the cops wonder how he could have driven a car in his state. They don't think it's possible.
No. Well, he wasn't in the passenger. He wasn't in the driver's seat.
He was at the back seat, yes.
But
then who drove the car?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unknowns in that story at the moment.
It's almost like someone else actually...
Yes, drove the car.
Yes.
Yeah, you would think so. Daniel wasn't prescribed any of the drugs that are found in his body. So they must come from someone else.
It's weird.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's not like the US.
No, you can't buy them over the counter. No, they have to be prescribed.
The only way you get serious heavy-duty stuff, well, not even. The only thing you can buy on a pharmacy over the counter is kind of like paracetamol.
But you can buy ibuprofen. But in
but I mean, it's small painkillers. You can't buy...
Ibuprofen wasn't allowed over the counter until the 2000s.
I mean,
in France. You had to have it prescribed.
It's
now over the counter, but it wasn't for a long time. So
yeah,
so yes.
I mean, you don't get anything without your doctor. I mean, it's just you have to go and see your doctor. I mean, I've got hypothyroidism, so I'm on medication for the rest of my life. And in the UK, you just renewed your prescription. You didn't really need to go near your doctor. But here in France, you have to go to your doctor. I have to go to my doctor every 3 months.
Yeah, the doctor is not allowed to prescribe you medication for more than 3 months at a time.
And it's just, so they won't give you everything. You know, I mean, I tell my doctor, I've got migraines, I've got an ear infection, whatever, and they readily, they will give you anything, but you just don't buy anything over the counter here. It's so difficult to buy anything over the counter here. Antihistamines and paracetamol and ibuprofen,
light antihistamines,
Doliprane and stuff like that. It's all that's it.
Yeah, and
nothing
even antihistamines, it's only the light ones. The heavy duty ones have to be prescribed as well.
Yes, yeah.
The doctor that examined the body finds out that Temesta had been prescribed to Manuela for depression. So at that point, the story starts to smell.
So she has access to
at least one of the drugs found in his body, yes.
Which is what I was saying. You're not going to be able to get the hold of these drugs unless you see a doctor, and it's easy to find out.
Doesn't prove that it's her.
No.
Other people would have access to it.
Yes.
But she's one of the people who had.
Yeah.
For the gendarmes, at that point, she becomes a suspect.
Well, because she's the partner anyway.
Yeah, and they have no other clue anyway.
No.
So
not unless he's some kind of drug lord.
No, they do door to door, and it doesn't come with anything. They're no problem neighbors.
No. He hasn't got a big list of enemies.
Yes.
He's not running guns or anything.
No, exactly.
He's not a human trafficker.
Yes, Daniel and Manuela live with their 2 kids, a son from his previous marriage and a daughter from her previous marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They have nearly the same age. There's less than a year's difference between the 2 kids. So yeah, they have no trouble. They're good neighbors. She does apparently lots of babysitting in the neighborhood. So if people want their kid looked after at the last minute, they call her, and she usually comes and does it. So yeah, there's just nothing.
So they're just average.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think twice about them.
No, there's just nothing about them that sticks out.
So no wonder the wife is instantly on their radar, because he's not going to have any big neighbours or any, especially not setting someone on and drugging them and setting them on fire.
Yeah.
That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. They met in 1991. He was at the time a coppersmith, and she was a driving instructor.
See, she would have been better driving him.
Yes. She was apparently very good looking at the time, and she was attracting men. Apparently, that's something that a lot of people have said. They fall in love and move together quickly, and they get married 6 years later. So they didn't rush it.
No.
In 2004, Manuela's business goes south. She's been found out committing fraud to driving licenses with the help of an driving examiner.
Okay.
They were selling turnkey driving licenses, essentially. So you come with enough money and you get a driving license.
Yeah, you don't have to sit the
test and everything.
Yeah. That's very dangerous.
Yes. Oh, yeah. She's sentenced to 10 months in prison, suspended, and 80,000 euros fine.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
With interdiction, prohibition to be a driving instructor for 5 years. So she sells the business to one of her brothers.
That's 80,000. Wow.
Yes.
Mind you, you're putting people behind the wheel of a death machine if they haven't been taught properly.
Yeah. So the cops at that point decide that they're going to put pressure on her. So they arrest her and they start interrogating her.
Right.
And although she didn't seem to react much when they told her that her husband was dead, during the interrogation she reacts a lot, and they have to stop, and she is sent to hospital.
So she went from one extreme to the other.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't ring bells either. Both ring bells.
Yeah, it doesn't seem consistent, but I don't know. You never know when people are told bad news. Who knows?
There isn't, they always say that, don't they? There's no archetypal way to behave.
Mm-hmm.
People are in shock.
Yes. Yeah, and they don't necessarily know how they're going to react. But that's something that she complained a lot during the whole story, that when she was reacting not enough, people were saying that she was cold and obviously calculated. And when she was reacting, people were saying that she was just putting up a front and doing too much. So she said she couldn't win. Whichever way she was reacting, people were telling that she was faking it.
Yeah, but there's
somehow.
orders of magnitude of being upset.
Yeah, but yeah.
Don't go straight to 11.
So they look a bit more into her background, and they discover that she's very unlucky. And Daniel Cano is husband number 4.
Wow, okay.
And he's the third husband who died in strange circumstances. 15 years earlier, she was called Manuela Gonzales, and she had been living with a man called Thierry Le Chevalier for 2 years. The couple isn't working at that point. She has an affair, a secret affair. Husband number 3, Thierry Le Chevalier, dies in a fire that started in a cupboard. Apparently, it was full of newspapers and somehow ignited.
So she's pyro girl.
Well, there seems to be something going on there.
Which is kind of weird because it's normally blokes that light fires.
Yes. And on top of that, he had swallowed a good dose of sleeping pills.
Oh my God. She's even got the same MO. Okay.
Yeah, but she has a good alibi at the time.
Sure.
She was with her lover.
Oh, Jesus.
Who became husband number 4.
And he was still...
Daniel Cano, the dead guy.
Oh, right, okay.
So he testifies that, she was with him, and therefore she couldn't have killed husband number 3. So the authorities dropped the case.
So, I mean, there's no way he would have given her a false alibi.
No. Before that, in 1989, Manuela lives with husband number 2, François Collado. He was a bar owner in a nearby town. One morning, he was found in his car in his garage, engine running. He was dead.
Oh.
The death was ruled a suicide. Manuela having told the cops that François was depressed. And
she seems to invoke a lot of depression.
And his body contained a high dose of sleeping pills.
Oh my God.
That he wasn't prescribed.
The only thing that's missing is the flames at that point.
Yeah. Before that, in late 1984, she lives with a jeweler called Michel Garcia. One day he's found passed out in his shop. He remained in a coma for several weeks because someone had put very strong psychotic drugs in his tea. That time, Manuela is found out. She's the one who put the drugs in his tea, and she stole 4 checks for a total of 84,000 euros.
So she was trying to murder him and rob him.
Yeah. Allegedly to feed her daughter. With good leaves, I guess.
I was going to say, what's she kind of like the Salt Bay dude with these hugely expensive steaks that you put gold on them?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, because 84,000 for food, that's a lot of food.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
She's sentenced to 2 years suspended prison at that point.
What, sorry? She didn't even go to prison?
No.
That's insane. She tried to murder someone.
She didn't murder him. And I suspect he didn't press charges.
Oh my God, he's a dumbass. Of course, he doesn't know the future pattern.
Yes.
We're talking with hindsight.
Yes. Before that, in 1976...
Oh my God, there's more?
Well, yeah, there's 4 husbands. Before that, in 1976, she's 16 years old, and she meets a guy called Gilbert Mortoya. They fell in love and moved together and got married 2 years later. They even have a daughter, Virginie, born in 1981. In 1984, Gilbert is rushed to A&E with suspected poisoning. He fell into a coma for 3 months, ended up having part of his esophagus removed. One of the drugs in his body is Temesta. He wasn't prescribed that drug. He survives, and he never accuses Manuela of having poisoned him. But a few weeks later, they divorce.
I mean, that's insane that she poisoned somebody before the jeweler, and she gets a suspended sentence.
No, before the jeweler, she's not even accused of anything. Because
no, but I mean, they should have looked into the past.
Yeah, but the husband refused to press charges, so there was nothing. It's just
oh my God,
some magic poisoning at that point.
Ridiculous. And she did that when she was 16.
No, she met him when she was 16.
Met him when
she was 24 at the time.
Right.
Surprisingly, she's not arrested for any of those cases.
It's just crazy.
Even though we know it's always the wife.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, maybe it's not crazy because we know how she is and we know that she's a Black Widow, but come on.
Yeah, or the cops get, by the time of murder number 4, husband number 4 being dead, because they're not all dead, 3 of them out of 4, the cops get a lot of flack for having not done a very good job of checking things and connecting dots that were very, very obvious.
Yeah.
Yes. They just let her get away with it. When they search the house, the cops discover envelopes of large sums of money at the back of the sofa. There's a total of 28,000 euros in several envelopes with names on them.
Who leaves 28 grand down the back of the sofa?
I know, in envelopes, in cash. And I've seen photos of it. It was big notes, like 500 euro notes.
Wow. I couldn't even tell you what a 500 euro note looks like.
Yeah, no, I've never seen the real one. They have no idea where the money comes from and what it's for. There's no explanation. But they're pretty sure it's not legitimate, because if it was legitimate money, it would be in the bank.
Yeah.
So they know
the
that
tax man
money's
would be having his fingers in it. So if it's behind the back of the sofa, you don't want the tax man to know.
Exactly. So they know it's not right. They also discover in their research that the couple is drowning in debts. Manuela has a penchant for gambling, and she's not very good at it. She has several loans to cover debts, gambling debts, for about 110,000 euros at that point.
Oh, she's got 87 grand down the back of her sofa.
No, 28.
Oh, 28.
Yes.
I inflated it.
Yes.
But still, she could make a dent in it with all that.
A small one. But I suspect the 28,000 euros were for other gambling that nobody knows about, illegal gambling.
Okay, so did
because the 110,000 is for legal gambling, is casinos and stuff.
Wow.
I suspect the 28,000 are to pay loan sharks or whatever illegal gambling she's done that the cops won't have any trace of.
So we've got a motive, and is the husband well insured?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. The house had been mortgaged to cover some additional debts,
right,
for 160,000 euros. Danielle didn't know.
Oh no.
Manuela had been paying the mortgage from a bank account whose address was at her parents'.
Right.
So separate from their joint bank
So
account.
none of the paperwork has gone anywhere near him.
Exactly. He learned about it one day because she fell down the stairs at her parents' and ended up in hospital for a while. And she missed the payment.
Right.
Because she was doing it manually.
Okay.
It wasn't automatic.
Yeah.
So the bank, having her name and his name, went to him.
Right. And he's like,
and
what?
They said, you didn't pay your mortgage. And he said,
what mortgage?
What mortgage? I built my own house with my own hands. There's no mortgage on my house. And that's how he discovered that, in fact, there was one.
She's been rumbled.
Yep. The gendarmes discovered that the signature on the mortgage papers were probably faked.
Yeah.
What's weird is that to sign those papers,
you have to be there, don't you know?
Well, they would have had to do it in front of a notaire.
Yeah.
And the notaire has to check who's in front of him to make sure that's the right person. That's his only job is to be a witness. So they don't understand how it could have happened. Was the notaire in it? What happened there? So nobody knows how that mortgage would have been signed. Who was there for the signature? And why wasn't the notaire realizing that the person in front of him wasn't him?
Yeah.
Because I've seen photos of the signatures. They are totally different. There is absolutely no doubt the signature on the mortgage is not his signature.
What's a lazy?
It's a made-up signature that has nothing to do with his. So
a lazy notaire.
That is very weird. Their son, Nicola, or his son, technically speaking, biologically, confirmed that money was a significant source of arguments between his parents.
That's not that unusual, but yeah.
No, he also tells the Rosers that his father had no suicidal behavior at all. On the contrary, he says that he had planned to start building a garage next to the house, and he had planned to go fishing salmon in Canada.
Wow.
So not plans a guy who's going to commit suicide makes.
He clearly didn't know about his wife's huge amounts of debt.
Of debts, yes. The reason why Nicholas decides to talk to the cops is that one day he had a call from Manuela, who was pissed off because she said she felt that he was telling lies about her. The cops had wiretapped her phone by that point, and they're listening to all that conversation. And Nicholas defends himself, saying that he suspects everybody. That he makes no exception. He wants to know what happened to his dad.
To his dad, yeah,
exactly.
Quite right.
And he's lost a lot in that story. He's lost his dad.
Yeah.
And her answer to that was that she also lost a lot, about 3,000 euros a month.
Wow, she's cold.
And you can hear on the phone a long silence. And then you have Nicholas said, but money's not the only thing in life. We've lost a person. And she said, oh, yeah, I've lost a lot as well. but I've lost a lot of money, so you can't consider me a suspect because I've lost so much money. And she says it several times, and several times he tells her money is not everything there is in life. At that point, he gets so pissed off at her that he goes to the cops and starts talking about everything he knows.
Right.
So that's why he's talking to the cops, because he's a kid at the time. They don't really interview kids unless they really have to. And he just goes to them. He gets a lawyer and goes to them and say, okay, this is all I know. And that's how they learn a few things. He also says that during the night of the 29th of September 2008, a month before Daniel's death, Daniel was woken up at 4 a.m. in his bedroom by the fire brigade because the room is on fire. That's
the candle
traces
fire
of smoke that the cops found on the bedroom.
Yeah.
So that happened a month earlier. He managed to get out just in time. That matches more or less what Manuela said, the story she said about the smoke. But Nicholas remembered that his dad at some point was shouting at Manuela later saying, "Don't take me for an idiot. I know there was no candle in that room." Yeah. So he tells all that to the cops. One thing that the fire brigade found strange when they came for that fire is that normally when there's a house on fire, especially when people are in the house at the time, the inhabitants of the house are shocked and sometimes hysterical. So they run around and there's lots of things happening.
Like a
headless
and it's a mess. Chicken, yeah.
In that case, everything was super quiet. Manuela was sitting on the sofa downstairs, waiting for the fire to be put out upstairs. So she wasn't.
She was still in.
She was in the house, sitting on the sofa, waiting. When they arrived,
weird.
And he was in the room. The room was on fire. He was in the room. They wake him up when they come in.
Oh my God.
The reason why he's not dead is the fire brigade arrived fast enough and woke him up. Because she was sitting on the sofa downstairs and he was in the bed upstairs.
Well, because that should have been reported to the police. That's psychopath.
Yes, that's a very strange story. So the fire brigade thought that was quite weird.
Well,
and also,
did the fire brigade not think to get the police involved?
Obviously not, I don't know.
It's crazy.
Another thing that's weird is that, as far as I can tell, every mention of the fire I found said the neighbors called the fire brigade.
She didn't even call.
She didn't call the fire brigade.
She said it.
The neighbors called them.
Holy crap!
So that is so weird.
I mean, I think if I had been him, I would have been going to some kind of lab and getting them to test my blood because I bet he had stuff in his system.
Most likely, yes, but there was no test done. So.
No, well, not if it was Dean, but that is just nuts that she sat downstairs like some kind of just raging psychopath.
Yeah. And also there was no candle in that room.
No.
The fire brigade didn't find any. Because they looked for something. And they're sure accelerant was used. They're sure there was no candle.
I cannot believe that they're not legally obliged to get, I mean, if it seems like arson, which clearly it did.
Yeah, I don't know.
Crazy.
So when the Rosas hear all that, they're like certain that
it's her.
Manuela is
the
cause of death of number 4.
So she's murdered four blokes and a dog. Three blokes and a dog.
I think I've seen a newspaper headline that said 3 murders and 2 comas.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, the gendarmes learned that during the inquiry that Daniel might have had a secret affair as well. But it's unclear exactly if it's true. It's unclear who it would be because they don't go that way. They don't investigate that part.
No.
They're not interested to know.
Well, it's clearly
if
about
he had an
her.
affair, given that Manuela is obviously the murderer.
Oh, yeah, and so, the motive is just hugely clear.
And it's money, clearly. Yes. But they think that there could be an additional motive, which is because he had an affair, but they don't prove it. They don't interview the person who is supposed to be.
Well, we know he has a thing for getting involved with married women because, I mean, that's how he.
Well, that would be the first time, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how Daniela and him got together. Yeah. So
Manuela and Daniela.
Manuela,
yes. Yeah, exactly. So yes, it wouldn't be surprising, but they don't think it's that important, so they don't check that. During all that, the cops receive an anonymous letter. It alleged that it's from a friend of the family, and it says that the writer can't hold their silence anymore, and it accuses Nicholas of having murdered his father. Apparently, Nicholas and his dad had sometimes arguments, and Nicholas was known for sometimes drinking a bit too much, So the letter says, yeah, he drank too much on that night and murdered his dad. The cops analyzed the letter, but nothing comes of it. They can't decide who sent it.
You mean they can't prove that Manuela wrote it?
It might not be her, because it's a bit more complicated than that on her side. I don't remember if I have much of that later. Her family is seriously weird. The cops don't know that at the time.
Right.
They learned it much later, just before the trial, when they try to talk to the family. And when they contact the family and say, we want to interview you about that affair, the answer of the family, the whole family on her side, she has 7 brothers and sisters.
With a name like
and
Manuela.
And her parents, they're Spanish originally.
Yes.
But she's born in France, but her parents came from Spain.
They must be Catholic, though. That's the reason why she's got
totally.
so many.
The answer from brothers and sisters and parents is, you can come once, we'll talk to you, we'll all be there. You don't talk to us individually.
That's weird.
So the cops send a psychologist to talk to them.
Right.
And he says,
Man,
it was
weird.
so weird.
Yeah.
When he was asking questions, the dad would make eye signs to the kid who would answer the question.
Right.
And
Okay.
nobody would volunteer any information.
Daddy's in control then.
Oh, yes. So it could be that one of the brothers or sisters wrote that letter and sent it. It might not be her. We don't know who it is. It could well be somebody in the family. In fact, it's likely to be somebody in the family.
But I think given the reaction when the conversation with Manuela and the son about, finding out who killed his dad. I mean, that all seemed genuine. And So, I mean, there's no way he did it. She did it.
Oh, yeah, clearly she did it. The cops are sure of it.
Oh,
yes. They just need to prove it. When the psychologist interviewed the family as well, it lasted 3 hours. And after 3 hours, the dad said, that's it, that's finished, go away.
The egg timer stopped and
left.
that was it, your time's off.
He talked to one of the brothers at some other point. I can't remember how he managed to do that, but he managed to talk to one of the brothers on his own. And he asked him, what's the
deal, bro?
No, what's the main value of your family? And he was expecting to hear something like money or something like that.
Just do what daddy says.
Or do what daddy says, yes. And his answer was honesty. And when he said in later interviews, when I heard that, I didn't know what to say because they had obviously lied to my face.
Yeah.
I knew they were all liars. And he says the value of the family is honesty. I didn't know what to say. So anyway, the family is seriously weird. So we don't know who sent the anonymous letter. My bet is on one of the brothers, but who knows? We can't know.
On daddy's instructions, possibly.
Yes, but the cops don't believe a second what the letter says anyway. They just ignore it.
Good.
They think that they hit the jackpot when they discover that Manuela has several life insurance policies on her husband for 234,000 euros or so.
That's the only one who's hitting the jackpot.
Yep. So she clearly had so many reasons to make money out of his death because...
many thousands of...
there would be life insurance policy.
Yep.
That would pay all her debts. Mm-hmm. The mortgage would be cancelled because it was in his name and they had insurance. So if he died, the mortgage is paid. So that's free money again.
Yep.
And even though she loses income, she also kind of benefits from his death in terms of compensation and all that in various ways. So she would make a shitload of money out of his death.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think she's thinking long term, really. She's like most people who have a gambling habit. They think short term. If I can just get ahead, then that'll be fine. They don't think about the fact that they're just going to be 6 months down the line, down a different hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. So the cops interview Manuela again, but she has been in trouble with the law before, as we know.
Yes.
And there's a few things that I haven't mentioned that have also happened. Like she bought a car in her daughter's name by faking her signature, for example, and she's been found out. She's a crook, essentially.
She is. She's a poisoning, fraudster, murderer.
Yes.
I mean, she's covering a lot of bases, yes.
Yeah. So she knows how to handle police interrogations.
Of course.
So they can't get anything out of her.
No, of course
they
not.
just can't make her talk.
And she's a psychopath.
Yes. But they discover a hole in her parents' questioning. They questioned her parents when they started to think it might be her.
Mm-hmm.
They use software to log everything they have. It's something the cops have been doing since the late 90s.
Right.
It's called Anacrime.
Right.
Or Anacrime, Analysis of Crime, I guess, is
Yes.
the name of the software. And what it does is it compares everything and tries to find holes in stories or inconsistencies or missing things
Yes. Mm-hmm.
by analyzing dates and places and
I
people.
think I've seen a story about that.
Yes,
software.
we had. It solved another case a long time ago that we talked about
Yes.
by showing that a guy who said he had an alibi, in fact, when you compare everything that was actually known about him, didn't have an alibi.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, same software. And it shows one thing. It shows that her dad says that on the morning the body was found, Danielle's body, one of his daughter got a call at about 8 a.m. from Manuela. He remembers hearing, "All I know is that Danielle is dead," on the phone. That was confirmed by his wife, that there was a call at roughly the same time, and they got phone records, and it shows that there was a call between 7:55 and 8 a.m. from Manuela to the landline of one of her sisters. Of course, they just have a record of the call. They don't know what was being talked about. But that creates a big problem in her story, because at that point, nobody had found the body.
Mm.
And at that point, she said she didn't know Danielle was dead because
later
in the morning, she was walking with a leash looking for the dog.
Yes.
And she pretended not to know her husband was dead because they told her late in the morning at her house.
Mm-hmm.
How could she know hours earlier on the phone to one of her sisters?
Yeah.
The only reason she would have known is
she did it.
She did it.
Mm.
So at that point, they think they have enough to arrest her. On the 23rd of March 2010, they arrest her for murder. They try to make her confess. She doesn't.
No.
But the judge decides there's enough and she's charged.
Yeah.
She goes to trial, and it starts on the 14th of April 2004. She's been in prison for 4 years at that point. She pleads not guilty because she thinks she can get away with it.
Of course.
She's done it 3 times. Mm. During the trial, a psychologist describes Manuela as having an interesting personality, and it's very hard to describe. He says that after several interviews, she's still a complete enigma to him. He just doesn't understand her personality.
Wow.
There are a few dodgy things in the story that the defense tries to use. For example, Manuela's clothes are never checked for accelerant or smoke, for example, after the body is found and the car is burnt. Also, was it really true that it was the neighbors that called the fire brigade when there was a fire in the bedroom? That never is checked. The notaire, he's questioned, but because it was so many years earlier, he says, I can't remember who was sitting there.
No.
But nobody can explain how it would not have been Danielle. That's his job to ask for ID.
Yes.
ID papers with a photo. It should be obvious it's not the right person. One of the stories I heard is that she had what's called procuration, i.e. you can get somebody else to sign for you, which we've done when we bought and sold houses. Yeah. So it's possible, but again, she would have had to do...
At some point, you still have to...
Exactly, to have the papers signed with a witness. So nobody can explain how that was possible, how she could have faked the mortgage papers, given that at some point there has to be somebody to check your identity.
Yes.
They can't explain that. There's also a lot of talk about the death of the previous husbands that haven't been investigated well enough. And it should have been obvious that they were connected, but the cops never saw that it was. At some point, the defense wants the body of Danielle's mom to be exhumed because Manuela says that when she was buried, he wrote a letter that he put in the coffin that said that he would meet her soon. And she uses that as an argument to show that he was depressed and suicidal. So they want the body to be exhumed, and the prosecutor and the judge says, don't, no, just no.
No.
So it doesn't happen.
No good.
In the end, she's sentenced to 30 years in prison. So that's the longest sentence you can possibly get.
30 years for
30 years.
For all those murders.
Yes. You can't get more anyway.
Okay.
The 30 years is considered life. So even if you're the only thing you could be sentenced to more than 30 years is forever.
Yes. Like the old guy.
Yes. Like the previous one, episode 75, I think the guy was sentenced to for life, prison forever, and is still there 40-something years later.
80s, yes.
But that's very rare. Normally you get 20 years for a murder, 25 if it was nasty, 30 if you're clearly a serial murderer, life if it was exceptional.
I think I've become desensitized to the ludicrous American system where you've been
750
to
years,
750,000 years. It's ridiculous.
That's nonsense.
It's there, so 30 years, okay.
30 years is the maximum you can possibly get, and it's not very common.
No.
She appeals, and on the 30th of May 2016, the appeal court confirmed the sentence. Mm-hmm. She appeals again to the High Court, and she's denied, and then she appeals again to the EU Court of Justice, and she's denied again.
And they laugh in her face.
Yes. So she's now in prison for the next 20-something years of her sentence, but she'll be probably around 80 or 90 by the time she comes out.
Yeah.
So she's probably going to die in prison.
Good.
But that's her story.
Yes. And never bet on the Black Widow.